Thank you for joining the Cozy Mystery Quartet. I'm ML Erdahl, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Wendy Kendall, Susan McCormick, and Linda Hope Lee. This episode, we're discussing the topic of pets in a cozy mystery, which to me are the sprinkles on a hot fudge sundae. Our animal friends bring color, pizzazz, and fun to the story. New York Times bestseller Robert Dugoni once shared that he had a difficult time selling his first novel until an agent informed him that his main character was just too unlikable. His fix was the same as the title of the well-known screenwriting and storytelling resource, Save the Cat. The compassion of the protagonist saving a stray feline from the street was all it took to make the curmudgeonly man relatable to readers. Indeed, 2 out of 3 American households have a pet, and if it's anything like my home, they are members of the family who we treasure and love unconditionally. I'm sure that's true for most, and every one of those potential readers can relate to an animal in a story. This is particularly true in the setting of a cozy mystery, whose fans are looking for a healthy side of comfort to go with their murder. What brings more comfort and connection than a purring cat or a tail-wagging canine? Personally, I have 2 small pups and a big old cuddly cat that brings smiles to my face every day. So there was no way I wasn't going to include animals in my own novels. My main character, Crystal Rainey, has a cat named Elf. Elf, also known as Evil Little Feline, is a consistent fan favorite in my Seattle Wilderness Mystery series, and I can unequivocally say it's one character based on a real living being, Noelle, the ragdoll cat my wife adopted one Christmas Eve. Noelle terrorized the entire family, be they human, feline, or canine, but also had a spunky spirit that made you love the absolute dickens out of her. And it brings me immense enjoyment to include her wild behavior in my novels, such as in this passage from Spring Upon a Crime. As soon as she peeled the lid, Elf's eagerness got the better of him, and he swatted it from her hand. Murphy's Law took over, and the can landed upside down on the kitchen floor. Tisking, Crystal lifted it, and the entire contents plopped out. Elf sprung from his perch into the middle of the mess, stuffing as much as he could into his furry face. Did you behave this way for Mrs. McCready? She'll never watch you again. Crystal reached to keep him from gorging on the entire can, but her feisty pet let loose a feral growl. Many people have had a less than perfect pet in their life, and bond with the mischievous actions of Crystal's cat. My advice? Write them into your cozy and infuse them with as much life as you do the other characters in the story. People would keep reading just to see what humorous antics they get caught doing in your next book. Linda, would you like to share how pets are included in your writing?
Thank you, Michael. Yes, pets are frequently included in cozy mysteries. As might be expected, dogs and cats are the most popular. Dogs especially make good pals for the sleuths and may even assist in the sleuthing. Although I have not included a pet in my Nina Foster mystery series, another of my mystery series, featuring insurance investigator Jim Meacham, includes a wire-haired fox terrier named Angus. When Angus is introduced in Book 1, Formula for Death, he belongs to another character. Even so, he and Jim make friends and begin to bond. In Book 2, Final Performance, Jim becomes Angus's owner, which increases his role and importance in the story. Here are 2 techniques to consider when including pets in your cozies. Number 1. Characterize the pet just as you do the book's human characters. Include a physical description along with an identifying personality trait. Here's Angus's introduction in Book 2 when an airlines employee delivers a pet carrier to Jim's apartment. I saw a white curly-haired face peering out at me. Sure enough, it was Angus. "Hey, old buddy, we'll have you out of there in a minute." I unlatched the door and Angus bounded out. He stretched, yawned, shook himself, and with barely a glance at me, took off down the steps, across the lawn, and along the sidewalk. "Hey, you mutt, come back here. Angus, come." I knew he was well trained, but I also knew he had a mind of his own. Wire fox terriers do. They obey when it suits them, not you. Another characteristic of wire fox terriers is that they like to be included in their owner's activities. Angus is no exception. Here's an excerpt from the morning Jim sets out on an investigation. As I opened the door to my car, something white flashed by and into the back seat. Angus, by golly, I forgot about you. The dog sat there like some VIP waiting to be chauffeured. I reached in, grabbed his collar, and tugged. He wouldn't budge. Later, when Jim's associate Stella joins him, Angus leaned his paws over the front seat. When I talked, he looked at me, and when Stella spoke, he shifted his attention to her. I half expected him to interject a bark now and then, but he spared us that. Here's technique number 2. Allow the pet to take an active role in helping to solve the mystery. In final performance, Jim uses Angus as an excuse to investigate the suspect's property. I looked at my watch and said, "Hey, I almost forgot about Angus. I better walk him. If it's okay with you, John." "Who's Angus?" John asked. Wire Fox Terrier," I said. "Goes everywhere with me. He won't cause any trouble. I'll keep him on leash." John shrugged. "Well, okay, I guess it can't hurt." In another scene, Angus brings Jim an object that is an important clue. I turned to see Angus running toward me, something dangling from his mouth. "What you got, buddy?" He dropped it at my feet, then looked up, barked, and wagged his tail. I bent to examine his find, and as recognition dawned, I let out a low whistle. Good job, Angus. And here I thought I was the only detective on the case. So, to fully utilize pets in your cozies, endow them with characteristics as you would any other character. Show them exhibiting those characteristics, and then devise ways in which they can contribute to the investigation and ultimately to the mystery solution. So, Wendy, tell us how you use pets in your cozies.
Thanks, Linda. My research for Cat Out of the Bag included a ride along with a canine police patrol. What an experience! That adventure inspired my canine named Hobbs, who is a cozy pet and more. He's partnered with patrol cop Jason Holmes in my mystery. I won the ride along in a raffle, and it completely hooked me on having a canine police partner in the series. Cozy mystery pets are characters, just as the people in the books are. Jason's dog Hobbs is quite a contrast to the other pet in my series. I love writing about Catherine Watson and her once stray, now pampered cat, Purrata. That dear cat is a charmer and quite a personality. Hobbs has marked dimensions so very different to write about. His intense loyalty to Jason, his playful side, his training, his job. After their shift, these service dogs understand off-duty, and at home they are loving pets. There was so much I had to learn about police canines. My inspiring ride-along shift was 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. I'm delighted to share a few quick, interesting highlights from the real thing that prompted my imagination in writing the dog's adventures in Cat Out of the Bag, and also in Snow Kiss Cookies to Die For, which will be available in November. One of the major advantages of a canine officer is that the dog can see well in the dark, unlike their human partner. The German Shepherd on my ride-along responded to commands given in German to reduce the possibility of civilians confusing the dog by shouting their own instructions. These dogs' job is to chase and search when they immediately arrive on the scene. Once done with their assignment, the case is handed off to a detective. When in the chase, the best chances of following the scent is in the first 4 hours. Primarily, what the dogs are tracking are the dead skin cells that people shed all the time. Where I live in the Pacific Northwest, it's surprisingly an excellent place for tracking. The drizzling rain and small puddles are places where the dead skin cells float on top and are easier to track. The biggest problem for tracking by dogs is wind. The dogs are tracking not just suspects, but also evidence or any clues they can find. When the cop partner checks on a situation without the dog, like a domestic violence call, he or she leaves the canine in the patrol car. If the situation escalates and she or he needs the dog, the officer clicks a switch on their uniform vest that automatically opens the back door wide for the dog to run out and join in a hurry. This working dog on my ride along had a lot of personality, and whenever the man reached for the radio to talk with dispatch, his dog wanted to talk too, and he did always share some choice and loud dog barks and growls. Between duties and on their break, the two partners trained, played, and enjoyed each other's company. I learned so much on my ride along, and it's fun to incorporate it in the mystery plot and to do full justice to my working pet character Hobbs in the books. If you'd like to know more about the ride along, you can hear about it on the episode on my YouTube podcast, Kendall and Cooper Talk Mysteries. If you want to know more about Hobbs and Parada, enjoy reading Cat Out of the Bag. Susan, what do you say about cozy pets?
Thank you, Wendy. Furry pets play a special role in most cozy mysteries. Even Columbo had a dog, a basset hound named Dog. Some animals are even the sleuths themselves, like the talking chihuahua in the Barking Detective Mystery Series by Seattle authors Kurt Colbert and the late Waverly Fitzgerald. Almost certainly a cat or dog, the pet shows the main character at his or her best, caring for and caring about their fluffy accomplice. The pets make them relatable, allowing them to display kindness and empathy, and it affords an out-of-the-protagonist's head angle to talk about the crime. The elderly sleuths in the Fog Ladies series have their share of cats and dogs. Frances Noonan freely talks to her multicolored tabby Camouflage. Enid Carmichael has a high-strung Bichon Frise, Snowball, the menace of the building, biting ankles and terrorizing tenants. He almost foils Mrs. Carmichael's attempt to listen to a bad guy from her apartment perch over the street. Here's an excerpt. She turned the latch and carefully, silently swung wide the window so she could hear. Her tiny dog Snowball took that moment to skitter across the floor chasing a shadow. He slid into the table leg, knocking over her glass of sherry, which rained down on him like the Newfoundland drooling on that hot summer day. Snowball barked and barked, his high-pitched Bichon Frise yip, as if he'd been hit with a frigid dog shower instead of a tiny dollop of liquor. Mrs. Carmichael recoiled from the window as the man looked up. He couldn't see her, she knew that, but reflexes were reflexes. She retrieved the turkey sandwich from the refrigerator and plopped it on the floor by the frantic dog. He sat on it at once, and she returned to the window. At the end of book 1, though, the dog proves his mettle and aids in the capture of the murderer. In book 3, The Fog Ladies in the Soup, due out in the fall, a new pet arrives in the lives of the Fog Ladies, a small, fluffy black dog adopted by Alma Gordon when his master is murdered. The dog allows a humorous scene between Alma and Mr. Glenn. Now here was Boris curled comfortably on Mrs. Gordon's soft sofa, looking for all the world as if he intended to stay all day. He climbed up there when my back was turned, said Mr. Glenn. He won't get off. I tried. He weighs a ton. Chantrell will be here soon. Mrs. Gordon shooed the dog off with a wave of her hand. She brushed at a long black dog hair that clung to the couch. Let's get him fed. Will you weigh him again? I want to make sure we did the math right. He's hungry all the time. That's why he ate my sandwich, Mr. Glenn said. Boris's kibble amount was based on his weight. This seemed like nonsense to Alma. If she fed him more, he would weigh more. Then the chart would say to give him more food. Utter nonsense. But she followed rules, and she would follow this chart as well. The dog would not sit on her scale, and she couldn't lift him, so Mr. Glenn had hoisted him up the day he arrived. Mr. Glenn didn't want Alma to see his own weight, so he did the math himself. 30 pounds, he'd said then. Now here they were, a week and a half later, and Mr. Glenn was having trouble getting Boris off the ground. It wasn't the dog's fault. He stood there patiently as Albert wrapped one arm around his front legs and tried to scoop up his furry back end in the other. It took a few tries, with Albert widening his foot stance with each attempt. Finally, Albert positioned himself and the dog on the scale. 38 pounds, he huffed, and set the dog down heavily. Albert, are you sure? She said. Albert himself looked a little bigger. She'd seen him make 2 sandwiches to replace the one that Boris ate. Was it Albert gaining weight and not the dog? Pets allow for empathy and humor and fun. Cozies rely on pets to add depth to their characters, and not only that, the pets are true characters themselves. I'm Susan McCormick, and with Michael Erdahl, Linda Hope Lee, and Wendy Kendall, we are the Cozy Mystery Quartet. Please join us next time and like and subscribe so you won't miss an episode.